All right, fair enough. That's a good epilogue, I guess, to the previous discussion. Joe is up next in Kansas City on Sirius 130. Hello, Joe.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Joe, are you on Bluetooth or headset?
I am on my Bluetooth.
All right. It's harder to hear on Bluetooth. If you can pull over and use your headset, that'd be even better.
Not even any better?
That's
good.
Yes.
Yes,
very good.
Fantastic. Thanks for calling, Joe. How can Trent help you?
Well, Michael's got one problem. He's, obviously talking to a relatively sophisticated conversant. Mm-hmm. My problem comes when I'm talking with somebody who makes arguments like it's not a person in the same way that an egg is not a chicken or that a seed is not a tree.
Yes.
So when you're developing a conversation with somebody who maybe isn't the most logical or the most scientific in their approach, can you give me some pointers on how to speak with them in a way that's going to be understandable and that may be able to convince them to at least re-examine the issue?
Yeah, what you could say, for example, a seed is not a tree. I would say, you're right, a seed isn't a tree, but a sapling is a little tree. And some seeds, after they germinate, so a seed eventually becomes a tree. How does it do that? Well, it has to germinate, and the process begins where it grows, and it comes into a little sapling, little tree, then a big tree. So when it comes to human growth, we would just say, you're right, that a sperm or an egg isn't a human being, just as a seed isn't a tree. But when the egg is fertilized by the sperm, a human being comes into existence and grows and develops, just as the seed, when it germinates, becomes a little tiny plant that grows into a big tree, just as humans become a little baby that grows into a big adult. So there's a few ways I could go about this show. One, I would ask the person, one fun way to ask when someone says, well, a fetus is not a human being, to say, okay, well, what is a fetus? Can you define a fetus for me? How would you explain to someone what a fetus is who's never heard of that word before? And the only way you can explain it is that a fetus is the stage of development. That's what the medical dictionaries say. It's the stage of development in the life of the human being. So from the eighth week of life until birth. So you can ask the person, well, if the fetus is not a human being, when does a human being's life begin? When's the first stage of our life? And if they say birth, I would say, well, what existed in the womb before birth? Nothing changed at birth except for location. So that's another way that I would go about it, is to challenge the person to find what is a fetus, tell me what it is, or tell me what a human being is and why a fetus is not a human being. And those analogies, we have to get them correct. When we compare a seed to a tree or an egg to a chicken, the analogy is not fetus to adult, it's sperm or egg, unfertilized egg to adult. For example, a chicken egg, you're right, a chicken egg won't be a chicken. It's the ones we buy in the store are unfertilized. But a fertilized chicken egg is like a little baby or embryo. In fact, in the Philippines or in Southeast Asia, there's a snack called balut. It's a fertilized duck egg, and that is not a potential duck. It is crunchy, my friend. It is an actual little ducky in there. So that's not a potential duck. It's a duck with potential to quack and do the duck things it does. Much the same, an human embryo or human fetus is not a potential human being. It is a human being with great potential in its life, and if you kill that embryo or fetus, you don't kill something that's potential, you kill something actual that had a lot of potential. So do you see the distinction there?
Well, of course I see the distinction, but most of the people I'm speaking with will come back and say, well, a fetus isn't a human being. Yeah.
Right, and I would ask them, what makes something a human being? Ask them, what makes something a human being, and what is the fetus now? If it's not a human being, what species does it belong to? They have to burden answer. So what is a fetus now, and when do human beings begin to exist? Now, what may happen, though, Joe, is that they use the term human being in a philosophical sense. Sure, the fetus is a living human animal, but it's not a human being in the philosophical sense or personhood. So I would say, once again, give me a definition, what is a human being, and show how that either is too broad and could include even rodents. It has to move around and feel. Okay, a rat could do that. Or it's too narrow. Well, it's got to be able to think rationally. Well, an infant can't do that. that ultimately only the pro-life view of personhood or what it means to be human makes sense.
I think Joe's raising an issue a lot of pro-lifers have run into. I'm sure you have, and that is it becomes clear that your interlocutor, the person you're debating with, is just not up to the argument. They can't really understand questions you might pose about when you ask them to make distinctions. They're just not, they don't bring in, they know the slogans, they know the bumper stickers, but they can't analyze beyond that.
And that's why it's on our part to try to simplify the issue as much as possible, to say, look, I want to figure out what the unborn are. We know they're embryos and fetuses, but what do those words mean? And just looking it up online in a dictionary, embryo, human offspring, fetus, human offspring at certain weeks of development. And we need to figure out what is that and what does the word human being mean and how do we know our definition is correct, and just continue that dialogue with the person. If someone just says, well, I just know a fetus isn't human, and that's that, well, what about bigots who say, I just know a certain race are not humans? Well, that's just an assertion. Yeah, you need to give a reason, much the same as I can say, I know this table is not a circle because a circle has these certain properties. You have to tell us what properties a human being has and why what properties the unborn do not have that fall under that.
And that metaphor was a quack up. With that, I'm sorry I do that. We go to Matthew now in South Dakota.